For over 200,000 years, Europe was ruled by a remarkable apex predator. They were stronger than us, tougher than us, and perfectly adapted to survive one of the most brutal environments in the history of our planet. For generations, we've been taught to think of them as mindless, grunting brutes. But the truth is far more complex, and their disappearance is one of the greatest mysteries in human history. They were the Neanderthals, and they didn't go extinct because they were weak. They vanished because of a catastrophic, invisible threat, one that we somehow survived. So, what really happened to the first kings of the Ice Age? Chapter 1, The Other Humans. To understand why they died, you have to understand how they lived. 250,000 years ago, Europe and Asia belonged entirely to the Neanderthals. Forget the stereotype of the stupid caveman. Neanderthals were master survivors. They had brains just as large as ours, and sometimes even bigger. They mastered the control of fire long before we ever met them. They used Stone Age chemistry to create complex adhesives out of birch tar to make specialized tools. They made art, they wore jewelry, and they even buried their dead with flowers. They were deeply, profoundly human. And physically, they were absolute tanks. Their bones were thicker, their joints were heavier, and their bodies were short and stocky. This wasn't an accident. It was an evolutionary masterstroke. A compact body loses much less heat, making them the ultimate cold-weather survivors. If you put an early modern human and a Neanderthal in a wrestling match, the human wouldn't stand a chance. Chapter 2, Built Stronger Than Us. Their immense physical strength was absolutely required for how they hunted. Modern humans eventually learned to throw light projectiles from a safe distance, not Neanderthals. Because of the dense, freezing forest environments they lived in, they relied entirely on ambush hunting. They ran right up to mammoths and woolly rhinos and engaged them in brutal, close-quarters combat using heavy thrusting spears. It was an incredibly violent, dangerous way to live. When archaeologists look at Neanderthal skeletons today, they are covered in fractures and healed broken bones. In fact, their injury patterns look exactly like the injuries we see today in professional rodeo riders. They took a massive beating from the world, but they survived it. For hundreds of thousands of years, they were the undisputed kings of the Ice Age. But around 40,000 years ago, the rules of the game changed, and being the strongest player on the board was no longer enough. Chapter 3, The World Breaks Apart. The planet's climate didn't just get cold, it went completely insane. Scientists call these abrupt temperature swings Dansgaard-Oeschger events, but one specific nightmare, known as Heinrich Event 4, completely broke the Neanderthals' world. Massive armadas of icebergs broke off into the North Atlantic Ocean. The ocean currents shut down. Within a single human lifetime, the climate violently swung. The dense forests Neanderthals used for their ambush hunting died out, replaced by massive, open, freezing deserts. The giant herds of animals they relied on either moved away or died off. Neanderthals were incredibly tough, but they lived in very small, isolated family groups. When the forests died and food became scarce, these tiny groups got trapped. Imagine a family sitting around one fire, suddenly realizing the animals were gone. The rivers were frozen, and no one else was ever coming to help them. They didn't lose a war against us, their world just became incredibly lonely. Chapter 4, The Human Web. Enter Homo sapiens. We migrated into Europe right as this climate apocalypse was happening. We weren't as strong as Neanderthals. We weren't built for the extreme cold, so how did we survive? We had an invisible weapon: massive social networks. A groundbreaking 2026 study revealed that the secret to human survival wasn't just better tools, it was our unprecedented ability to connect. While Neanderthals stayed in small, isolated pockets, humans built massive webs of relationships across huge distances. And one of the main ways we built these networks? Play. Humans engaged in shared, rule-based games. Games acted as a social machine, allowing strangers from entirely different tribes to interact safely, build trust, and create what sociologists call durable weak ties. If a human tribe's valley froze over and all their food died, they didn't just sit there and starve, they used their social network. They packed up, followed the invisible lines of connection, and sought refuge with distant allies. Neanderthals were strong enough to fight a mammoth, but humans were connected enough to fight the apocalypse. Chapter 5. They didn't fully disappear. The lonely species eventually faded into the ice. Around 40,000 years ago, the last true Neanderthal took their final breath. But that's not actually the end of the story, because before they vanished, our two species met. We didn't just compete for resources, we interacted, we interbred. Humans recognized Neanderthals not as monsters, but as fellow humans, and because of that, a piece of them survived. If you are of non-African descent, about 1 to 3% of your DNA comes directly from Neanderthals, And it's not just dead code. Their DNA still actively shapes your life today. It affects your hair color. It influences your sleeping patterns. Most importantly, the immune system genes we inherited from them, genes like OAS1 and STAT2, helped our ancestors fight off ancient viruses, and they still help your body fight off sickness today. They were the ultimate survivors of the Ice Age. They didn't lose. They just became part of us. So the next time you wake up in the middle of the night, or fight off a cold, remember the other humans, the ones who walked the ice, so that we could walk the earth. If you enjoyed this journey into the incredible world of our ancient cousins, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more deep dives into the untold stories of human history. Let me know in the comments below, did you know you were carrying Neanderthal DNA? Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next on.